With the date being March 16th, 2021, I felt it was appropriate to do a video about Stone Cold Steve Austin because as far as topical content for WrestleMania season at the moment, there's not really a lot going on. Like, McIntyre vs. Lashley for the WWE title is now official for the main event of night one of WrestleMania, and Braun Strowman is going to be facing Shane McMahon at Fastlane. The New Day are now tag champions for an 11th time. Yay. They're going to be facing the Hurt, not the Hurt Business, they're going to be facing Styles and Omos at WrestleMania. So, Raw gave us a few WrestleMania card announcements, but nonetheless, this video is about Stone Cold Steve Austin, okay? Steve Austin, you're seeing it in the title, the thumbnail. What happened? Now, I'll get to that in like the later part of the video because it would be remiss of me on Austin 316 Day, when talking about Stone Cold Steve Austin, it would be incredibly naive of me, incredibly, harsh of me if I just went straight into, oh, well, Austin's a sellout, Austin's a simp nowadays. Like, that'd be just dumb of me, okay? I need to take a couple of minutes to praise Steve Austin. Now, when it comes to Stone Cold Steve Austin, I don't know what you personally think when you think of Stone Cold Steve Austin. To me, when I think Austin, I think of the guy who is near enough single-handedly responsible for saving wrestling, okay? Pro wrestling, WWF, they were quite frankly, I'll put it simply, they were on their knees in 1996, 1997. WCW had the WWF bent over backwards. They were slapping them silly, beating them down, like, just abusing them. WWF, through Austin, through a change in attitude, really, came back at WCW, and then they turned the tide in the war, 1998, never looked back. WWF went on to win the war. Austin was basically the catalyst of it with McMahon. So, the Steve Austin is heavily responsible for that, okay? If Stone Cold Steve Austin never became the star he became, WCW would have won the Monday Night Wars. Now, I've had a number of people ask me to do a video titled, what if WCW won the Monday Night Wars? And I get people want to see that, but I'll put it quite frankly and simply, if WCW won the Monday Night Wars, here's what would have happened. By 2005, pro wrestling would have been totally dead. You want to know why? Because WCW were inept. WCW couldn't book to save themselves. They were only entertaining in 2000 when Vince Russo took over the ship, and he was trying to push Booker T and the deserving guys amidst a company of people who had literally given up altogether. So, in that regard, drawing this back to the point, without Stone Cold Steve Austin, pro wrestling as a whole would have been completely dead by the mid to late 2000s. Okay, Stone Cold Steve Austin saved wrestling. Stone Cold Steve Austin was wrestling, you could say he's wrestling's biggest megastar ever, because Hogan, Austin, who's the biggest, bigger name? I mean, both are pretty much on the same tier. But really, when it comes to Steve Austin, I'll give my favorite Austin match and moment first. My favorite Austin moment, honestly, it's a tough one. Probably either when he poured cement in McMahon's Corvette, or when he beat McMahon up in the hospital, or like that run in mid to late 1998 where Austin was just abusing McMahon every week. That stuff was just gold. And then as far as favorite Austin match, for me, this one would have to be the WrestleMania 17 main event. I think that Mania 17 main event with Austin and Rock in the Texas what's the name of the stadium? I forget off the top of my head, but yeah, the Houston Astrodome, the Reliant Astrodome. That match was just amazing. So that's my favorite stuff for Austin. Now, time to get to the good stuff. Time to get to the stuff which you clicked on the video to hear. Okay, Stone Cold Steve Austin. What happened? When I think Steve Austin, I think of a guy who, for his time, was a top 3 celebrity in the world. This is someone, Stone Cold Steve Austin, 1998, 1999. This is one of the biggest names, the biggest megastars on planet Earth. Not just pro wrestling, in the world entirely. Okay, Stone Cold Steve Austin was everywhere. Austin 316, Austin McMahon. This thing was absolutely mainstream. These mainstream talk shows, Conan O'Brien, all these ones that were going in the late 90s, they were dying to get Stone Cold Steve Austin on their shows, okay? WWF was all the rage. Austin was the face of it. That was everything that was going on. And Austin, when I think of Austin, I always compare him to The Rock, because The Rock was near enough of the same star power in the exact same time period. Austin Rock were 1-2 from 98 through about 2001. It was those two guys in wrestling's apex. Those were the 1-2 top stars. So you look at those two guys, and really, I look at where they are now. I look at what Stone Cold Steve Austin's doing nowadays, and what The Rock's doing nowadays. I look at how Stone Cold Steve Austin carries himself nowadays, how The Rock carries himself nowadays. What is The Rock doing nowadays? The Rock is Hollywood's biggest star, and if you think that's a bit of an exaggeration, okay, fair. He's one of the top 3 to 5 stars in Hollywood. Okay, The Rock, he took his acting career, which in the early 2000s, Rock said he wants Will Smith's career, only bigger, badder, and better looking. And he got laughed at, he got laughed out of meetings. He got laughed out of meetings for saying that. And The Rock went on 20 years later to have the biggest acting career in Hollywood, doing all these blockbuster movies, Fast and Furious, Jumanji, etc., etc., etc. I need to name them. You know The Rock's movies. So The Rock's doing that. 200 plus million Instagram followers. One of the biggest celebrities on earth. Everyone knows The Rock. Dwayne Johnson. Everyone knows him. Stone Cold Steve Austin, on the other hand, this is a guy who very much is Austin's a guy who doesn't benefit from the whole "what have you done for me lately?" Because when it comes to Stone Cold Steve Austin, ever since Austin, dropped his ball and went home in 2002, what's Stone Cold Steve Austin done? He's been in The Condemned. He's been in a couple of straight-to-DVD kind of action-ish type movies. He's done his podcast. Podcasts have been really good. I cannot say anything negative about the podcast. His podcasts are good. What else has he done? He did Tough Enough. He has 4.8 million Instagram followers. Rock has 200 plus. I think upwards of 230 million. So you're comparing the star power of Austin and Rock, and you're comparing what Austin's doing nowadays, what Rock's doing nowadays. Austin, he's doing his show, not the Broken Skull Sessions. He has his show, I forget the exact name of it now, where he gets guests on, okay? And he gets the guests on. He got Becky Lynch on a year and a half ago. And it's the stuff they do. It's Stone Cold Steve Austin at 11 to 11:30 p.m. on the USA Network every Monday, doing this random show that gets a couple 100,000 viewers. He interviews some B, C, or D list celebrity from 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago who's only popular for one certain niche. And then the guest either beats up Austin or does some funny challenge, like Becky Lynch hit a stunner on Steve Austin. Stuff like that. That shows Steve Austin, that shows what's happened to the guy. Okay, Austin's become a guy, much like many of these former superstar wrestlers, like megastar wrestlers, who have almost become a sellout. Which, yes, it's Austin 316 Day. I don't want to, drag Austin through the mud on Austin 316 Day. That's not fair at all, considering what Austin did for the business. As I said earlier, if it wasn't for Steve Austin, wrestling wouldn't even be around today. WCW would have killed the business. So, with that being said, God bless Steve Austin, but when it comes to Steve Austin in the past decade or so, especially the last 5 odd years, you look at what he's doing, okay? Stone Cold Steve Austin is on Broken Skull Sessions interviews doing Ding Dong Hello with Bayley. What? This is the same Steve Austin who was kicking McMahon in the crotch every week, stunning him, flipping off, doing a double bird to 15,000 people in a jam-packed, energy up arena, selling out arenas across the nation. Everyone needed to see Steve Austin. That same guy from 98, 99, 2000, 2001, nowadays is doing Ding Dong Hello with Bayley on interviews. That same guy is getting stunned by Becky Lynch and selling stunners from Becky Lynch as Becky Lynch is pouring beer all over him. This same guy is simping for guys like Brett Favre and all these random celebrities he gets on this show after Raw. This is Steve Austin. This is a guy who, in all reality, because of what he did for the business, he should be far and away. And oh my God, Austin's doing this, Austin's doing that, the same way The Rock is. But the fact of the matter is, when you hear Steve Austin's going to appear on Raw, I'm not near enough any more inclined to go, yes, I need to see Raw. Oh my God, when's Raw on? When's Austin's segment? I'm just like, oh yeah, it's Stone Cold Steve Austin. WWE and Austin himself have taken away so much of his star power, his shine, his real, true megastar feel, because yes, this is always going to be Steve Austin. This is always going to be the guy, Austin 316, Austin McMahon, Austin saved the company. It's always going to be that guy. But what he's done to himself, he's emasculated his character of days gone by that was beloved by the masses, millions. That's been emasculated now. And now we're left with a Steve Austin who is laying down in the middle of the ring, taking stunners for Becky Lynch. A Steve Austin who is saying what to Byron Saxton. A Steve Austin who is saying that, the women in WWE need to be main eventing shows, and it's sexist that they're not. And like, this is what Austin's become. And it's not just Austin who this applies to. This is the same thing that Batista's doing. The same thing that Edge is doing. Just look at NXT. When Edge went on NXT about 2 months ago, and he was saying that Pete Dunne and Finn Balor are the best thing in the business. Okay, Edge is doing it. The Rock is doing it. Okay, yes, I mentioned The Rock. The Rock is much bigger of a mainstream star, but The Rock's doing this whole thing where I remember 6 to 8 months ago when Dolph Ziggler was in the WWE title picture, we had The Rock commenting on an Instagram post. There was a picture of Dolph Ziggler with the WWE Championship. The Rock commented saying that he'd be all for this decision. Ziggler works hard, he busts his backside, that type of thing. So you look at all these current wrestlers, Mick Foley, The Rock, Austin, Edge, Batista. Need I say more? Just go on and on down the list. These guys who just praise the current stuff, even though in a lot of aspects it's not really worthy of the praise. But Austin does it to fit in. He emasculates his persona of what made him so famous to fit an agenda, to fit in, to stay cool with the locker room nowadays, to get on well with all these guys. Austin doesn't want to do what The Undertaker does. The Undertaker is one of the most hated men backstage nowadays. You want to know why? Because The Undertaker spits facts. And it's not cool to spit facts nowadays, because you get seen as, someone who is, going against the grain, someone who doesn't fit in, someone who, to get political for just a second, is on the right if you speak supposed, truth. I won't get into political stuff. Political stuff is hell anyway. Nonetheless, that's been the video. Stone Cold Steve Austin. Happy Austin 316 Day. I want to have a general, deep dive chat about Stone Cold Steve Austin. What's happened to the guy? Like, comment, so you know the drill. See ya.